In A Quiet Place, survival depends on not saying anything. The 2018 film and its 2020 sequel are built on a simple premise. Aliens have invaded Earth, killing anything that makes a sound. It's a story that's told with next to no dialogue, but viewers seem to hear a message anyway. According to some critics, the film is actually a political allegory for a culture where people feel they'll be pounced on for saying what they really think. A Quiet Place saw a backlash from liberals who saw a right-wing commentary in this parallel to complaints of PC culture, as well as in the film's romanticized portrayal of the mythic American family. Meanwhile, the film was championed by some conservative voices for the same reasons. But this loaded debate around A Quiet Place came as a surprise to its star and director John Krasinski, who said he never intended to tell a political story. Since their inception, horror films have been seen as inherently political. They prey on the fears that lurk just beneath the surface of society. They turn our anxieties into literal monsters. And in the end, the real terror almost always turns out to be us.
They pick the most dangerous enemy they can find, and it's themselves.
In A Quiet Place Part 2, the story's central family ventures out into a damaged community at large, and the second installment comes across as a parable for today's contentious and divided climate, in which both sides paint the other as the enemy.
The people that are left, they're not the kind of people worth saving.
But how did A Quiet Place end up becoming an ideological litmus test in the first place? Here's our take on A Quiet Place's unexpected political controversy, and why some viewers seem to have heard a message loud and clear, even in the silence.
You're watching The Take. Thanks for watching, and be sure to share and subscribe.
This video is brought to you by Raid: Shadow Legends, a role-playing game that transports you to a world of dark fantasy and epic realism. To save the world of Teleria, your challenge will be to assemble a team, recruiting from hundreds of legendary champions, training them to fight, and preparing for strategic battle. Raid also recently launched the highly anticipated Battle Pass feature. If you fulfill the game's daily and weekly challenges, you'll get to increase your rank and earn rewards like free energy refills, gems, upgraded artifact sets, and new champions. This game is available on both your mobile and desktop devices, allowing you to easily switch between devices. And the best part is, Raid is totally free to play. Click the links in the video description, and if you are a new player, you'll get 200,000 silver and 1 free champion. All this treasure will be waiting for you here. These rewards are only available for the next 30 days, so hurry!
You're safe. They can't hear us.
In one respect, A Quiet Place presents the Abbott family's quiet life as an almost idyllic state, a meditative, monastic retreat from the horror that surrounds them. It's one that anyone who's exhausted by the din of 24-hour news and social media chatter might find appealing.
Kanye was just on TMZ and he said slavery was a choice.
But because this silence is being forced upon them, some interpret this as suppression. The Abbotts live in constant fear of being attacked just for speaking out, or for making any noise at all. It's a complaint that's become a familiar refrain from those who believe the world has become too politically correct, too full of social justice warriors who are ready to pounce at the first disagreeable sound.
So what they do is they'll use identity to try and silence anyone else from saying anything. You're not allowed to say that because of who I am.
Right.
Brian Raven Ehrenpreis wrote at Medium, A Quiet Place is interested above all else in exploring the ways in which white conservatives today are being silenced. And Clark Welton at the conservative City Journal agreed, calling it an allegorical retelling of the conquest of Western society by enforcers of political correctness. With the Abbotts' simple, virtuous, and distinctly all-American way of life under constant threat from these outsiders who even rob them of their freedom of speech, the film has been read by both liberal and conservative critics as a story about white victimhood. The New Yorker's Richard Brody pointed out that when two characters, who are both white men, commit suicide by making enough noise to draw the monsters to them, they do so by howling as if with rage, the wordless equivalent of,
"I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!"
At the same time, the feeling of not being able to speak freely doesn't exist only for people on the right. Liberals may also feel stifled by the right's equivalent to political correctness, patriotic correctness, which likewise dictates what's not allowed to be said.
First member of Congress to ever describe terrorists who killed thousands of Americans on 9/11 as some people who did something, quote unquote. Unbelievable.
When A Quiet Place first found its way to John Krasinski, he connected to the parenting themes at the heart of the story.
When I got the original script, we had just had our daughter 3 weeks before. I was scared to keep her safe, scared to keep her alive, and all these things are in this movie.
As he would later elaborate to The Hollywood Reporter, this is a movie about family. It's a metaphor about what family is and the extremes you go to as a parent to protect your kids.
Who are we if we can't protect them? Who are we?
A Quiet Place's focus on a single family doesn't sound political on the surface, but in fact, the idea of the American family is at the center of all our nation's ideological debates.
That would want to tear down the very foundation, the family unit that holds America together.
Sharing familiar concepts and imagery with other movies about alien invasions, or worlds transformed into ghost towns by contagions or zombies, at its root, A Quiet Place taps into the universal fear of invasion, of having the sanctity of home violated by intruders. Holed up in their farmhouse, a merciless threat lurking just outside their door, the Abbott situation harkens back to the days of pioneers living in the untamed West, fearing attack from Native American tribes. It's a story that is steeped in foundational American myth.
And you creep along with this very quietly, like
a little mouse.
Hurry up, Martha. The moon's fixing to rise.
oh, you won't make a sound to come back no matter what you hear.
In his article, The Silently Regressive Politics of A Quiet Place, New Yorker critic Richard Brody derided what he called this survivalist horror fantasy, a depiction of the home as a fortress to be secured at all costs. The Economist's Nicholas Barber took it even further, saying that the film's depiction of one well-armed farmer fending off an entire alien threat fulfills one of the fondest fantasies of Second Amendment obsessives. Both argued that the film plays directly into the paranoia that fuels so much of gun culture, as well as the old-fashioned idealization of the good guy with a gun.
The only thing that's going to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
A Quiet Place is immersed in a nostalgic vision of early American life that's so often romanticized by conservatives.
The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth.
The Abbott family has even fallen back into conventional patriarchal roles. The men do the hunting and fishing, while the women tend to the cooking, the chores, and child rearing. The men are the protectors, and the women rely on them to be protected. In this old-fashioned tableau of Americana, we see familiar patriotic icons that have been symbolically shelved or stalled. The Abbotts' old-fashioned rural life is a reminder of an American dream that's been deferred, destroyed by a threat that could stand in for any number of existential fears that the country faces. Those threats have also been read as moral ones. Some see a not-so-subtle endorsement of pro-life values in the Abbotts' decision to have another baby, knowing full well that its existence would imperil their own and endanger their existing kids. In The Washington Post, columnist Sonny Bunch hailed the film as pro-life in the sense that it is pro-living life, arguing that the Abbotts' choice underscores the idea that life without family is no life at all.
I could have carried. Should have carried.
Catholic Bishop Robert Barron even deemed A Quiet Place the most unexpectedly religious film of the year for its pro-life messages, its depiction of faith, and ultimately, for the father's Christ-like act of self-sacrifice to save his children. Still, there are elements of A Quiet Place that could actually be read as progressive. In the end, it's the mother and the daughter who emerge as the film's true heroes. While Evelyn says she needs men to take care of her, time and again we see how strong and resourceful she is, how capable and tough. So, A Quiet Place really shows us that some of these surface old-fashioned family values are just a delusion. In the end, it is Evelyn who becomes her family's protector.
She's just trying to keep everybody alive.
Meanwhile, the monster's weakness is figured out by Regan, the abbot's hearing-impaired daughter, who's played by the real-life deaf actress Millicent Simmons.
I hope that this inspires writers and directors to make more stories that include deaf people, but all kinds of disabled people, I think, need to be included in these stories.
This young person, who represents a traditionally marginalized group, uses feedback from her hearing aid to fight the monsters. So she embodies the importance of embracing what's different about you and unlocking potential in places that people tend to overlook. One of the big reasons the Abbotts have been able to survive at all is presumably because, unlike most families, they can communicate with each other via sign language. And the tide finally turns when Regan steps up to the mic, symbolically amplifying her signal. Because the film can be read either way, some, like Vox critic Aja Romano, have suggested that the film is largely apolitical, that it resonates most with a beleaguered and battered public, tired of fighting with each other, evading harassment from members of the opposite side of the political spectrum. The Abbotts, Romano says, are a nuclear family growing and becoming closer as a result of crisis, instead of being driven further apart. This theme finds its greatest expression in the relationship between Lee and Regan, whose inability to communicate creates misunderstanding and tension.
You still love her, right?
Of course I do.
You should tell her.
Their situation reflects a world that feels more and more ideologically divided, Romano notes, but it also offers a reminder that we find our greatest strength in loving one another. This kind of unity seems achievable within a family, but in A Quiet Place Part 2, the Abbotts, now led by a single mom, are confronted with the vicious outside world of hardened survivors.
The idea of these kids and this family dealing with their safety net being taken from them, they are forced to go out into the world and see how other people live.
As Emily Blunt told Entertainment Weekly, the sequel is about how far would you go to extend your hand to a neighbor. She added that the film is dealing with that fractured sense of community that we're probably feeling on quite a global scale now.
There's nothing left. Please.
Naturally, the community that the Abbott family discovers is as divided as our own, and there is plenty to fear from the other.
There are people out there worth saving.
You don't know, do you?
Of course, exactly who those scary people are and what sort of threats they represent once again comes down to your own political interpretation.
Every step is much more treacherous.
You know they're not safe.
So how did so many come away convinced of a subtextual political agenda Krasinski swears wasn't there? Much of this reading has to do with context, our perception not only of the filmmaker's intent, but of the real world just outside the frame.
You know, the truth is, I don't think my name was a name that you would think, oh, that guy's gonna go direct a horror movie.
Long before A Quiet Place, John Krasinski became famous as The Office's Jim Halpert. Jim is a quintessential everyman, the smirking voice of reason amid so much cartoonish chaos. He's a nice guy who longs for something better, unfailingly loyal to those he loves. And because we know so little about Krasinski's character in A Quiet Place, the film relies greatly on this built-in affection viewers already have for him. But in more recent years, Krasinski has sought to toughen his image.
Comedy is what you do. You do it great.
In the first segment, you said you loved A Quiet Place.
I did. I saw it twice. I laughed my ass off.
His movie roles have increasingly molded his trademark boy-next-door charm and all-American wholesomeness into something decidedly more rugged and aggressive. The first hint of this transformation came in the 2016 film 13 Hours.
I want the car!
No, I'm not gonna do that.
For Michael Bay's dramatization of the attacks on American ambassadors in Benghazi, Krasinski grew a manly beard and packed on 25 pounds of muscle to convincingly play a former Navy SEAL. A few years earlier, in 2011, he had actually screen tested for Captain America.
All of a sudden, Chris Hemsworth walked by as Thor, and he's like, "Hey, mate." And I went, "I'm good. This is stupid. It's okay. I'm not Captain America. It's fine."
While he didn't get the part, the fact that he was even considered spoke to Krasinski's action hero aspirations. Then came Jack Ryan. Krasinski assumed the role of Tom Clancy's super spy in 2018, only a few months after A Quiet Place debuted.
I'm an analyst. I don't interrogate people, I write reports.
Like Jim Halpert crossed with 24's Jack Bauer, this Jack Ryan is an everyman, taken to an action hero extreme.
I'm an analyst. What does that mean?
Many have found it's a series that turns intelligence work into thrilling TV. But the Amazon series, like 13 Hours, has also been criticized for a simplistic, jingoistic portrayal of American interventionism. Some have even called it outright propaganda. Krasinski didn't see these projects as political either. Talking to the Daily Beast about 13 Hours, he said, "The truth is, we should all be proud of these guys, and the moment you politicize it, the more you're moving us toward a world that I don't want to be living in. A world where people want to score political points at all costs." He took a similar tack toward the CIA.
The CIA is something that we should all not only cherish, but be saying thank you every single day.
But while he tried to remain apolitical, a perception that Krasinski was becoming the face of red-blooded conservative ideals began to take hold. In 2018, BuzzFeed's Alison Willmore dubbed Krasinski a red state hero, writing that his new action movie persona was just an evolution of the nice guy image Krasinski had honed on The Office. Jim's sensitivity is still there, she writes. It's just been transmuted into anxiety, specifically a white male anxiety about protecting what one has. That anxiety has been a dominant cultural theme ever since the 2016 election of Donald Trump, who has repeatedly stoked fears among white middle-class Americans that their lives are being threatened by the other, whatever form that takes.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
As Vox's Aja Romano noted, A Quiet Place is the first major post-apocalypse film drawn entirely in the Trump era. It's an age of unease that's been a boon to the horror genre, inspiring movies that play on many of the latent problems that Trump's presidency has brought to the surface. Problems like toxic masculinity, wealth inequality, class warfare, and racism.
By the way, I would have voted for Obama for a third term if I could.
This has created a wave of films that have been popularly termed social thrillers by one of their most prominent voices, director Jordan Peele, who has popularized the form with his films Get Out and Us.
I call it a social thriller. Inspired by Stepford Wives, Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
You know, these movies that are creepy, but, you know, humanity is like the creepiest part at the center of it.
So, in light of all of this, it's easy to see why so many would interpret A Quiet Place, released amid this wave of social thrillers and starring America's favorite everyman turned red state hero, as another political statement, even if that's decidedly not what the creators had in mind. Ultimately, the rather noisy debate around the nature of A Quiet Place's silence demonstrates the limits of how much a creator's intention matters. In the end, it's what the audience takes from a piece of art that dominates its public narrative and what it means to people.
But isn't the point of art less what people put into it and more what people get out of it?
As A Quiet Place shows us, sometimes a film's perceived message depends more on who's listening than what it's actually saying. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get notified about all our new videos.